ideal for this meeting, so we're going to try to keep it to about 30 minutes and have a hard stop at 9. Depending on how many questions we have, if we're still going, we're going to have a hard stop at 9 o'clock. So we had with the governor's announcement on Wednesday, we didn't have a lot of great options on when to have this thing, and we just thought this was the best timing out of the options we had. When we did the survey recently, we discovered that about 75 to 80% of our club really wanted to play this summer, which frankly surprised us quite a bit. But once we learned that, we just knew that it was something we had to make happen. So, and obviously our goal was to get the kids back to playing as quickly as we could, but as safely as we could as well. And our staff has been working extremely hard to do that, and they've been doing a great job. So I appreciate them and everything they've been doing, and I appreciate all the support that we've received from all of our families. I'm just going to do a little intro here on the agenda just to tell you what we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to let Omar and Mary do what they do and talk about the different phases. So we're going to do a very, very high-level overview of the Back on Track plan, mostly just to show you how it corresponds to what we're doing at Echo. And then we'll talk about the phased return to play plan, which is, phases 1, 2, and 3. And in the process there, Mary's going to talk about the social distancing measures that we have in place for phase 1. As we get to 2 and 3, we'll communicate different things about those phases when they come closer to us. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A at some point about 2/3 of the way through the presentation. We'll open up the comment function on Zoom, and if you have a question, just type it in there. It's easiest, and we're just kind of asking for everyone to keep themselves on mute, so it's easy to hear and talk, and just submit your questions that way. Mary, if you could move to the next slide, please. So most of you are probably familiar with the Indiana Back on Track plan at this point. Our return to play plan mirrors the Indiana Back on Track plan, and we meet or exceed the standards of that at each of the phases. And also the Indiana soccer guidance, they've got a return to activity guidance. We've studied that. We've studied the Back on Track guidance. We've talked to medical experts. We've talked to Indy Premier. We've talked to Indiana Soccer. There's just been a ton of stuff going on behind the scenes that all went into this plan. So the Indiana Stage 3, which is what we just went into, corresponds with our Echo Phase 1. And then Indiana Stage 4, which is scheduled to start around June 14th, would correspond with our phase 2. And then when Indiana goes to stage 5, the July 4th and beyond, that'll correspond to our phase 3. So, and Omar's going to talk about all those different phases starting now with phase 1.
Thank you, Ryan, Mary, and Kaylin for assisting in putting this together. I also want to take this time to say thank you to all the parents in the club, and I see that we have some players with us as well tonight. Thank you to all of you on this Memorial Day weekend. We appreciate you taking the time on Sunday night to join us in this return to play format that we put together. As Ryan indicated, we're going to get right into phase 1 here. As you'll see, phase 1 is May 25th to June 13th. We begin phase 1 with this upcoming week, which is Monday, May 25th. What that's going to consist of from Monday, May 25th to 28th is our virtual core river training with Coach Bryant. One of the reasons why we decided to go virtual is obviously we've heard the news now with the governor announcing that we can move forward with participating in-person activities, but what we don't want to happen is to kind of just rush things through. So we want to ease our way into getting the kids back on the field. And one way we thought about that is to ensure that we can allow them to still get training, but from a virtual way as well. So with that being said, as part of your package with Michiana Echo, when you register your child, you do get 8 weeks of Corver training, 8 weeks in the fall, 8 weeks in the spring. And we will be starting that this week virtually. And instead of going 1 hour long at one time, we know how demanding that could be if we're just working on, ball mastery for 1 hour. We decided to break that down into 30-minute sessions. Okay, so you'll see U10 boys and U10 girls, okay, as well as U11 and U12 boys and girls will participate on Monday and Wednesday. Your times are listed there. U10 boys will be 5:30 to 6. U10 girls will be 6:15 to 6:45 p.m. U11 and U12 boys will participate at 7 p.m. to 7:30, and U11, U12 girls will participate from 7:45 to 8:15 p.m. These will be live sessions, not recorded. Okay, so Coach Bryant will be at the Echo Indoor facility running these sessions live. Tuesdays and Thursdays, as you can see, will be U13 and U14 boys at 5:30 to 6, U13, U14 girls at 6:15 to 6:45, and high school boys from 7 to 7:30, and high school girls from 7:45 to 8:15 p.m. These sessions will start right on time, so they will run from 5:30 to 6. And Coach Bryant has been instructed to just do the full 30 minutes, not wait for anyone else to get on. So I highly encourage you all to get on 2 or 3 minutes early so that we can start at 5:30 sharp, for example, and we're shutting things down right at 6 so Coach Bryant can get prepared for the next group, which would be at 6:15. You can go to the next slide there, Mary, please. So as we indicated, we will start virtually here on Monday, May 25th. Our facilities will open June 1st. Okay, so from June 1st to June 13th, that's when our on-field activities will start. This is when teams will receive 1 in-person Corver session per week. So the way the guidelines work at the moment, U10 and under will receive 45 minutes of in-person training, and 11 and over will receive 1 hour of in-person training. These are the rules that have been provided to us by the governor's guidelines and Indiana soccer guidelines. Social distancing guidelines are in place. Basically what that consists of in phase 1 is it's training with no competition. So this means no physically going at each other with 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, small-sided games. So everything that will happen will be ball mastery, speed and agility exercises that you'll see here in a minute. And as well as some virtual activities may continue. So your coach at this time may decide that he may want to do a session with you or not virtually. That is also up to the coaches. But in-person sessions from June 1 to June 13 will strictly be Corver so that we can continue to ease our way in to June 15th, which would be our next phase 2. At the end of this presentation, we will be sending out the Zoom links for each age group for those that have opted in. So you will get that tonight at the conclusion of this presentation. And now I'll pass it over to Mary so she can talk a little bit more about the social distancing measures that are in phase 1.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to, like Omar said, discuss our guidelines that we'll have in place when the kids come to the fields. So all activities will be optional and to the discretion of the parents if your player is healthy. Players must be screened by their parents prior to training using the CDC coronavirus self-checker. And we'll show you what that looks like in a moment. Players are subject to screening at training if they are exhibiting any symptoms. We will have staff out at the fields that will help us do that. All of our coaches will be provided masks, hand sanitizer, and disinfectant, and they will be wearing their masks the entire training until that June 14th date. Players will also be assigned specific areas for equipment and training. Training, like Omar said, will be technical and agility training. There will be no 1v1, 2v2 competitions during this first phase of training. And sessions will be designed so there is no contact. Training sessions will be limited to 45 minutes for U10 and 60 minutes for everyone else. We're going to be limiting the field usage out at the field so we can space them out. Players will not be sharing equipment, snacks, or water. Players must bring their own mask, which is optional, and hand sanitizer. Indiana Soccer is encouraging that the kids wear masks to and from the field, but for safety concerns, not wear them during training because we don't want them restricting oxygen while they're doing training. There's going to be 30 minutes between the sessions to allow us to clear the fields and start the new training. Players may not leave their cars more than 5 minutes before the session time. We have some drop-off and pickup procedures that will be in place, and we will send those out to you. You'll see we did a little video that you can kind of see what it's going to look like. And parents must remain in their vehicles at training. So the training is not going to be open to parents. We're going to ask that if you want to stay at training, you remain in your cars. And no carpooling is permitted. Again, this is another thing that came down from Indiana Soccer and is asking that the kids come with their own families instead of groups. ECHO will have staff to monitor for compliance. All parents and players must read the complete set of social distancing guidelines. Failure to follow the guidelines will subject you to removal from the facilities. And we have a link to the website with all this information listed there. And this is what the CDC self-checker looks like. And we are asking that as a parent, you run through this with your player before practice. And it's just going to go through all the different information guidelines that the CDC has. So if the kids are able to play and feeling well, they can come to practice. If they're exhibiting any signs of sickness, they should not be out there. So this is just a basic run through of what that will look like. All right, I'm going to go to the next screen. This will advance. Okay, when the kids get to the fields, they're going to see number of color-coded dots and training spots on the field. We've done this to limit the amount of equipment we're using because we just don't want the kids. We know it's kind of nature for the kids if they kick over a cone to turn over and grab it and flip it back over, and we just don't want the kids handling any equipment. So you'll see that when they arrive, there's going to be yellow dots along the sideline of the field, and those will be their personal like home base for their bag, their water. That's where they will leave their stuff. They are spaced 6 feet apart so that there will be no sharing. They'll have their own space. The blue dot will be where they're starting their spots for training, for technical training, and an orange dot will mimic what a cone is, and it's another marker for training. You'll also see that we'll have increased signage out at the fields, indicating the parking drop-offs and also the maintained social distancing.
Hey, Mary, if I can make a quick comment here, it would just be, I think since we have a lot of kids that carry their equipment in the same bag, that have the Echo bags from Adidas, it would be probably a good idea, especially if your kids have one of those bags, to put something on it, some kind of tag or something that makes it a little easier to identify from a distance, so they can recall where their bag is when they're walking back to it. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. And I would also add to that to make sure that they've clearly labeled their ball and their water bottle as well too, so just nothing gets mixed up. So thank you for that, Ryan. And then we put together this little video that we hope everyone will watch, especially for the kids. It just kind of goes through the procedures and what it's going to look like when you get to the fields and what it's going to look like when you're at the fields.
And player 3 comes to the next stop besides player 2. Pay attention, make sure you're staying on your blue dot, please. We're going to dribble inside, outside with our left foot. Every single foot. Outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside. All the way to the orange dot. Turn around, go the left foot again to the blue dot. Good job. And on your blue dot, you need to turn school back. Go.
All right, so that's our little amateur PSA video that we hope will be helpful to the kids and adults, just so you can kind of see what it's going to look like. Hold on, sorry, there we go. When they're out at the fields, and we will have that posted so that kids can view it as well for those of you that are not here tonight. So I'm going to turn it back over to Omar to review phase 2 and beyond.
Great. Thank you, Mary, for sharing all that information. Very valuable information for all of us there. All right, so let's get right into phase 2 here. So phase 2, which is June 14th to July 3rd. First and foremost, just before we get into June 14th, I think it's important to note that we will have the Corver coaches at the field, and also we'll have myself, we'll have all 3 directors, myself, Kalen, and Duma, assisting with directing the players where to go. So myself, Duma, and Cameron will be stationed at all 3 locations when the players arrive. So it should be quite simple for them when they do arrive with our direction for them. So here we'll start getting to June 15th, which is an exciting day. Why? Because we're actually allowed to do more specific soccer activities, more small-sided games. So we'll have a bit more of modified social distancing to allow competition with enhanced health and safety. So with that, we'll be putting in specific measurements as well as directions where, even though they can be doing small-sided games in 1v1s and 2v2s, etc., what we don't want, for example, is we don't want a long line of 12 kids, being 1 or 2 feet apart, right? So we still want to be able to acknowledge the social distancing to a certain extent, but at the same time, only putting them in competitive activities when we have to. All teams at this point will receive 1 Corver session as they are, but then also include 1 75-minute session, which includes training with their coaches, so their team coaches. So for example, if your coach is Coach Dave, then what happens is you have your Corver session with Coach, let's just say Coach Bryant, in-person session, of course, and then you have your team training with Coach Dave. All the coaches will be receiving session plans on recommendations on what to use throughout their training sessions. During this time, We've had a number of clubs reach out to us in regards to scheduling friendlies, which is great. So our plan is to, rather than just jumping right into games with other teams, the DOCs have all got together in the state to try to figure out which is the best route to go when it comes to easing our players into competition. We've come to conclusion and agree that through small-sided games between June 14th and July 3rd is ideal. But then also, starting that first week off, getting in scrimmages in-house if possible. So for example, there'll be some age groups where we have to combine, let's just say 08s and 09s, right? And that's what every club is kind of doing in the state. We would set up a match against maybe our other 08 and 09 team, or we'd set up maybe a game between our 04s and 03s. So that first week or two may look like small-sided games and then in-house games. Okay, so that's what we mean when we say in-house games, just getting teams to scrimmage against each other. And then friendlies as well. What we've done is we've connected with a few other local clubs, and then also a few clubs, such as Fort Wayne Sports Clubs, Three Lions, and some of those clubs are a little bit further out. And we've set up home and away matches, which I'll talk about once we get to the next phase. But our plan is in the early part of phase 2 is to host a weekend where we don't have to travel really until late July. During this phase as well, we will continue with some virtual activities with your coach's discretion as well. Next slide there, Mary. Phase 2, okay. This is also, we keep saying it's an important phase. Each phase is important as we get into that phase, right? So phase 1 is important, but then when we get to phase 2 is just as important, if not more important than phase 1. Phase 2 includes our tryout stage as well. So June 22nd is when tryouts can begin. Our tryout schedule is on our website, if I'm not mistaken. Tryouts will be held in the evenings. We also what we did not want to do is I did not want the kids to come June 14th, start training outdoors, and then immediately have to shut things down June 22nd. At the same time, we do want to take in consideration the social distancing and still comply with that in any way we can. So we've decided to keep tryouts in the evenings, show loyalty to our players that have registered with the early club commitment. They do not have to attend tryouts, but also at the same time, we want to still allow them to come out to the fields and play. So what we will be doing is once we get closer to this June 22nd date, I will be sending out a schedule where you'll see small-sided games will be conducted during the day for our existing players. So let's just say U10 will be scheduled maybe at noon from Monday to Thursday. And they'll come to the fields at noon and they'll play for an hour and just play 4v4 mini tournaments. Same thing with the 11s, 12, 13, 14s, etc. At this time, some virtual activities may continue. And as indicated, your early club commitment players do not need to attend tryouts. May do so, but really they don't have to. I think next, yep, all right. This is when we start getting into phase 3. And again, just as important as the other phases, if not more important. This is when we will start beginning from the weeks of July 6th and July 13th. We'll continue with Corver sessions 1 day a week, as well as your team training, which will be 75-minute training sessions per week. We'll continue in-house games and friendlies as well. And I know I indicated here potential for friendlies and tournaments in expanded radius from home. I've been working endlessly with Fort Wayne Sports Club, Elkhart County United. And what we've done is, for example, tentatively, we've scheduled a June 20th date, and all this information will be released, where we would host, let's just say, Three Lions and Fort Wayne at our club, at our fields. And then let's say June 27th, or looking at phase 3, that July 6th week, we'd go to Fort Wayne and our team would go out there and participate. Obviously, as long as we are in compliance with the governor's guidelines and nothing has changed. At this time, sorry, I did forget to mention in phase 2, we will provide you with a schedule for your team training sessions. We don't want to send that right now because I don't want to confuse anyone with which sessions you're supposed to be attending, which virtual sessions you're supposed to be attending. So we need to understand that we want to ease this in a way where we can make everyone benefit from this and make it a lot more easier to understand. So we do apologize for the multiple emails you will receive in the next few days or few weeks, but please understand the reason why we're doing that is to not confuse you and to ease our way into everything. So tonight you'll receive the information on your virtual Zoom meetings. In the next couple of days, you'll receive your information on your actual in-person Corver training times. And then as we get closer to June 15th date, then we'll send you your actual team training times. And then just to conclude with our phase 3 here, you'll still receive some sort of virtual activities. If, again, it's not mandatory for your coaches to send it, but if your coaches would like to do so, they may do so. Going from weeks July 27th to August 10th, we do believe that it is important to give the kids a break. We understand that they've had a break up to now, but with everybody returning to play, we do value the importance of family time. So we do want to give, a little bit of time in there to enjoy that time with your family. We're hoping by July 4th that we are able to travel a little bit more and get back to normal, right? That's the goal for everyone. So we do want to recognize that and give a couple weeks for you to enjoy yourself with your families, your loved ones, especially with, the potential of school maybe starting early. Again, it just allows you to have some family time there and some travel time. As you'll see here on this slide, we just got informed that the season is going to start a bit later in August and end a bit later. So we anticipate the week of August 17th starting our training. So that's when our Corver and team trainings will begin. We've been informed that August 29th is the tentative start date for any teams that are participating in the Premier Division or the ISL First Division. September 12th is a tentative date that ISL has informed us that our U10s, so our academy teams, as well as our second, third, and fourth division teams will start. If you are a coach or a manager that's on this call, all team schedules will be done virtually by Zoom. So there'll be no in-person scheduling meetings. Myself, Kalen, and Duma will get with all the coaches, and Mary will get with all the managers on when this information will be released. But just so you know, the season for games will not be starting until August 29th if you are in First Division or Premier, or September 12th for second, third, and fourth in Academy. We have received emails on asking us if we have the schedule for fall. I ask that you be patient. We are still waiting from Indiana Soccer to let us know the actual start date for all of that. So we don't want to send any information out regarding fall and practice times until we have a definite answer from Indiana Soccer. All right, and I believe at this time, this concludes our presentation. Ryan, if you want to take over there, if there's anything that I've left out, and we could open up the chat box there if anybody has any comments or if anybody has any questions, now would be your time to do so.
Thanks, Omar. I don't have anything to add other than we've got a return to play page on our website that is now under the resources tab. So when you look at the menu at the top of the website toward the right, where there's a drop down under resources, there's a return to play page. We're going to be posting any relevant information onto that page. So this recording, the slide deck, our sheets related to return to play and everything, the CDC self-checker, the link to that, anything that's relevant information you'll be able to find there on that page.
Okay, I think we have a question here from Mary. Do you want to, or Ryan, Mary, do you want to answer this? How do we get to the CDC survey?
Right, that's the easiest place to find that is going to be if you go to that page I just mentioned, the return to play page on our website. Also, if you do a Google search for CDC self-checker, or I think it's also called the CDC Health Bot, it should show up. And that's pretty easy to use either on a mobile device or on a computer or something like that. One thing I should say is we do recommend, we're not requiring, but we would recommend as part of that screening that you do take temperature. But otherwise, if the CDC testing says you're good to go, then you're good to go.
Thanks, Ryan. I think I can take this next one here. A question about U16 being spring only. Yes. So in talks with Indiana Soccer, they have informed us that if for some reason there happens to be no Indiana high school soccer this fall, I mean, we obviously don't have that answer yet, but if for some reason there's no high school soccer in the fall, Indiana Soccer will be putting a league together for all our high school kids. So that's important to know. In regards to if there is a high school league in the fall, yes, high school teams and players will participate in the spring only, unless you are a trap player. So by trap player, what we mean is, let's just say you are an 05, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's U15 next year, or no, I'm sorry.
06.
06 or U15 next year, but your son or daughter may be in 06, but is still only going to grade 8, then they would be considered a trap player. In that circumstance, there's a couple options that we will support you with. One of those options may be playing with the 07s, because you're allowed to have 4 players per 07 team. What we did last year, we offered that option. We also offered an option with our partners with Indy Premier, or we've also offered options where you can train only. So there is an option. There is a direction for trap players for the 06s that may not be going to high school. But any high school kids, correct, will be playing their league games and majority of their tournaments in the spring. We most likely will be starting up though in November, early December with high school players. I do encourage you to, even though they start in spring, all clubs host tryouts for high school age groups at June 22nd week. Why, you may ask? Because it is quite a long time from now until December or end of November. Well, the 7-player comes into play. So if you're a high school parent and you may not understand what that means, basically we can only have 7 players from the same high school on one specific team. So that means if there's 8 06 boys that have been playing all their lives together, and they all decide to, let's just say, go to St. Joe together. Well, unfortunately, one of those 8 boys will have to get cut or moved to another team. Let's see if there's any other questions. What about a potential tournament since the MDI is canceled and you were scheduled to attend? Yes, all teams were scheduled to attend the MDI. Well, we were scheduled to attend different tournaments, and then we thought the MDI was going to happen. There are a few things we are working behind the scenes, okay? We know there's a Midwest tournament that one of the clubs is putting on. Again, rather than just jumping to make a decision and saying, yes, we're going to attend this tournament, that happens at the tail end of phase 2, I think early stages of phase 3. Mary, do we have the date of that one tournament? Is it July 15th? I could be.
Yes, I think it's the 2nd or 3rd week of July. I think that's
okay.
Right.
Okay, so the 2nd or 3rd week of July. So we are looking at that tournament. But again, I don't want to confirm that and say yes right now, just in case anything changes with the governor's guidelines. But the plan is to either one, do an in-house tournament and make it fun and attractive for everyone to be there, or 2, go to this Midwest tournament, which is only about 45 minutes to an hour away, if I'm not mistaken, and have our club participate, which would fall into phase 3, where, hopefully by July 4th, everything is back to normal there. Are there any team short players, and how will you match up kids to play? Good question. So in working with all the other DLCs across the state, most clubs have done similar to what we've done, where we've given you an opportunity to opt out by a certain date. One of the reasons why we selected May 11th date to opt in or opt out, so that we can put together teams. This summer is, the state has already informed us there's no promotion or regulation, for teams to move up divisions, drop down to divisions. So really, it's more just getting the kids out there to play, have fun, develop to the best of our ability, and just get out there, socially be involved, and just for our mental health, right? Just get out there and have fun again, and just act like kids. So what we've had to do with certain teams, like I will use the 06 boys, for example, since that's a team that I'm working with right now. We had a certain amount of 06 boys and then a certain amount of 05 boys, right? So what I've done is I've put those groups together. So those, when we get closer to the team training, those parents will be getting an email saying your child is with the 06, 05 age group. And so when we've done games with other teams, what we've done is we've scheduled opponents. So let's just say my 06 boys is a first division team or premier team, and the 05 boys is a premier team. Then when it comes to game scheduling, what we've done is we've looked at 3 Lions because they've had to done the same. So we've looked at teams where, let's just say maybe we're playing an older age group, but that team is in a second division. So the DOCs have matched up the age groups and the competition to the best of our ability from what we've had to work with. For the most part, there's not been too much movement, but everything is going to match up quite fine. Again, I encourage you all not to think of going out and winning and losing. It's about getting kids games, making it competitive, and whether we win 12-0 or lose 12-0, at least we're getting out there to play. But myself, if we get games with Irish, Elkhart, Invaders, 3 Lions, Fort Wayne, wherever it may be, we've put together a spreadsheet with all our kids' abilities, or should I say, sorry, our team's abilities and teams' playing groups to hopefully match each other up. Here someone is saying, but the 05 boys are mostly in high school and the 06 aren't. Won't that be unfair to them since they are high school? They have high school experience. I disagree with that. The reason being is because they will start training if they are going to high school. If the 06ers are going to high school, they're going to be going to high school, and they will start training with high school kids. So they will be training with 06s, 05s, 04s, 03s in the next couple of weeks, right? So it's honestly, it's going to benefit them to get them out there a little bit early into that competition, right? So I look at it as we're actually helping them and doing them a favor by giving them that experience before they go out there, because you might have your son or daughter may be a freshman, and in the next 3 weeks they'll be going against a senior. So I understand where you're coming from, but just from my experience, I actually think your child will benefit from playing with an 05 and an 06 or an 04 and 03. Or, for example, our 04 and 03 girls may go and play against an 02, right? We've come to conclusion as DOCs in the state that, if we have a premier team, let's just say with our 05s, 06s, and there's no other team to match them up, then why not put them against an 05, 03, an 04, 03 team that may be a lower division, right? So, all I can say is just trust the process, and we've put them in a position to be successful. But yeah, anyway, if you have any questions regarding that, you can just email me personally. But we think it's going to benefit them and give them a bit of advantage because they're going to experience that as they get into the high school training sessions in a couple weeks.
There's a couple of early club commitment questions here, and the one Mary might have to answer. Our high school kids are registered under ND Premier, but I don't know what that means in terms of the ECC registration. Do you, Mary, or is that something that
Yeah, no, I actually just messaged that person back privately. If anyone runs into an issue where they're seeing Indy Premier on their ECC, just please send me an email directly at info@michianaecho.com. All our ECCs should be under Echo. So if you find that it's showing Indy Premier, please let me know and we'll get that sorted for you.
And then with the self-checker, I can look more into the outcomes, but there's a couple of related questions here, I think. So there are some circumstances where, based on how you answer the questions, it's going to tell you to more or less monitor for symptoms or self-isolate or to get a COVID-19 test. Any of those kind of outcomes would be situations where the player shouldn't be coming back to practice until they're cleared medically to do so, which would mean either they've done the 14 days of self-isolation, or what seems more common as the testing is more available is that those, if you've been exposed to someone, you should be able to get a COVID-19 test and hopefully get the results within a couple of days. And then you would know at that point whether you're able to come back to play. So basically anything that's not a clean bill of health on the CDC bot, which would say you don't need a test and just, go forth and do good. Otherwise you would want to hold out of practice until you get a medical clearance. And then there's a question on ECC, if your child is aging up from academy. Do you want to talk about that, Omar?
Yes, so let's see here. How does ECC work if your child is aging up from, say, academy? Okay, so with a couple age groups, okay, so academy, what we've done is we've guaranteed your spot, and just going based off Coach Kalen, who is our academy director, and a couple of the other coaches that have been very active members in our club and also that serve on our board that are part of the academy age group. We've been working together and just trying to figure out how we can make 2 even teams at the U11 age group. So it's just finding a place for them to play and making it as even as possible. So for example, if you have the 2000, I got to get my age groups correctly here, but 2010, I believe, will be 09 next year. Will be U11 next year. So that if your child's born 2010, they'll be U11s. Basically, what we've done is just tried to keep the teams together. So I'll use the girls, for example. We believe that we have 2 competitive teams, just like we do right now. If you're a parent and you have a 2009 daughter, we have 2 girls teams that are tremendous, have great coaches, great skill level, and really are very competitive. That's fantastic for us as a club and for them. What that does is that it allows us to prepare them for when they get to the bigger field at 11v11. We want to try and do the same all the way around with our younger age group. So with academy, we'll put them in a pool there, and hopefully be able to create 2 even teams. If we can keep the same teams as they are, so for example, as we have, I want to say the Thorns and Royals. Kalen, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. But I think our understanding is we want to try to keep those teams together at the U11 age groups. Am I correct there, Kalen?
Yeah, you pretty much hit it on the head, just from a social standpoint. And sorry if you can hear my newborn baby crying in the background. But just from a social standpoint and, just to make things a little bit more comfortable for everybody, the kids and the families and things, the plan is just to kind of keep things the way they are for the fall, just to keep everything pretty similar. And so that's just the plan moving forward.
Thank you. Let's see here. Carpooling. If parents are in agreement to carpool, can we still do this? I believe a couple people asked this. Noah, thank you. And I think Danielle, if I'm not mistaken, you asked this as well. Thank you for that question. Believe me when I say this, I fought the state the minute they brought this up, because I don't know how we're going to be able to mandate this. We do understand that this can create a conflict for a lot of people. I do have a question. I do have that same question again sent out to the state. I've talked to other DLCs, and believe me, everybody voiced their disagreement with this on our call last week, because I think it's going to be very, very difficult to tell parents they can't carpool. We are just providing you what the state has informed us, but what some directors have done is they've reached out to the governor with this specific question. I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is just, try to work with the social distancing. And I understand that parents may agree to this, and all I can do is just encourage you to, not carpool. But if you do, I can't really tell you what's going to happen at this minute, because I don't know if the answer is making you turn around and go home. I do think it's, again, my personal opinion, I think it's silly, but at the same time, we have to comply with what the state tells us. But we do have that question circulating again with the state. So I'm hoping we'll be able to provide some more information on this, if it's mandatory or not. At this time, it's what the state has provided us. Will that change in the next 5 days? it may indeed change once we get definite answers from not only the state, but the governor, because I do know some DLCs, I've been in communication with the governor's office about a few things, and this is one of them. Another question here is, what if a player has immediate family who is sick with potential COVID-19 symptoms, but who has not been tested, so they don't know if a family member is infected with COVID-19 or not? This is with immediate family members. May that player attend practice, or must the family keep the player at home? I would say, and I'm not sure if Ryan or Mary want to take this, but I would say based on what we put together, they would have to stay home until that family member gets the results back. Ryan, do you want to take that? Am I accurate or?
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think you're going to pass the CDC self-checker under that circumstance. And then, so that would be a situation where you'd have to, I had someone not super close to me, but someone that I know that had this exact scenario, and they got their, they were exposed to someone who was exposed to someone who had the coronavirus, and they kind of did the testing. It took a couple days to get it back. And once they were negative, they were sort of at that point allowed to move on. So, and they had no symptoms. So Gwen raised a good point here at the bottom, where she says that the tests are not 100% sensitive. So if they're, anytime there's symptoms, even if the test is negative, you probably should keep your kids home until the symptoms go away. So, so what we're asking everyone to do is, I think everyone is familiar as can be sitting watching for, 2.5 months or however long it's been, feels like years actually, but watching everything on TV and the social distancing and the protocols for all this stuff, and the CDC self-checker kind of has a easy way to run through those, and we have to self-police. We're not going to be able to check everyone or determine who's got allergies and who has corona. So we just kind of have to, everyone has to do their best based on the information that they have and the resources that we have available, and just to utilize those, and take temperatures, use the COVID-19 checker that the CDC provides, obviously review any of those kind of resources. And I would just say, as we started off the presentation saying nothing's mandatory here, we're leaving everything in the hands of the parents. We want you guys to be in control of your children, and that's obviously as long as they're healthy. But if I just think on close calls, we just should all be erring on the side of caution at this point.
Monday, did you do your homework? Yeah, right now.
So that's all I would say about that. We're not healthcare professionals, and we're not going to be able to police this stuff that closely. So we're obviously relying on our parents and the choices that you make, and consultations with the doctors that are in your circle and that are treating your children and things like that to be able to make those kind of decisions. And with that, I don't see any more questions, I don't think. So it looks like we'll give you 10 minutes of extra Memorial Day weekend time back, and hope you guys all have a great rest of the Memorial Day weekend. We're excited to get started here, and we're looking forward to getting the kids out there and trying to do things as safely as we can. So thanks to all of you for all of your support and for being part of this great family of Echo people. And thanks again to the staff who's worked tremendously hard. It would be very hard to overstate how much work is going into this. So very grateful for an excellent staff that's working really hard and thinking about the kids a lot. So thank you to all of you. Happy Memorial Day, and we'll talk soon. Take care.